Hello and welcome. This is Story Time in the Garden with Pastor Deborah. Hello everyone, Pastor Deborah here. Gather around, for it is story time again about the One. Welcome to all. This story time in the Garden of Eden with Pastor Deborah is entitled His Majesty, the King. Is everyone sitting down? Good. Today's story time, as I said, is entitled His Majesty, the King. Everyone remember the last story? Wilbur? Yes, Pastor. It was about the One becoming a king within his own self. Yes, Wilbur, that is correct. The One birthed himself into a new identity, a new creation, a new nature, a king. The One brought forth out of himself his ancient identity of himself, his original concept, idea, thought about himself, that he was and always was a king. So out from the great depths of his own imaginations, his own heart, His Majesty, the King, came forth out of his own womb of life. For his own heart knew that as he thought in his heart, it was done. It was created. It became life. Little ones, the One still in his closet of being just one was now beginning to step out into his own eternal purposes for himself. His Majesty, the King, came forth out of the depths of his own heart. The One spoke to himself, and he brought forth his own thoughts. He was a king. He was a royal one. He was a majesty, a king. The One knew that this eternal concept of himself would be the great foundation of all he was to do out in the vastness of nothingness. All of his creation would come to learn that this identity was how it would rule. All of his creation would come to learn that this identity was the identity that would rule and reign over all its creation by the legal right of creation. The One knew that this concept of him being a king would be the nature and identity all would come to know about him and how to relate to him. The One knew he would slowly reveal himself to all creation as it developed and how they were to honor and respect this identity, this title, this nature, and the character that he would display before all creation for them to see and learn. The One knew from his own foreknowledge that this original concept, identity, character, and nature would be lost in the ages of time and covered over by the flesh of a soul. The One knew he would have to reveal himself time and time again through pictures, dark dreams of the night, in words written by his own creations, and would also be rebelled against by some of his own creations. And he would have to reveal more of the depths of this ancient identity to all. The One, through this royal identity, nature, character, spiritually revealed to all of creation this deep, ancient, eternal concept. He would reveal his royal abilities, his governing system for all of creation by his power of his words, his thoughts, his ideas, his heart's desires. He knew he would have to use his character, his nature of a royal king to rule his creation. This Majesty, the King, knew that all of creation would not know what a king was and what it meant to be living in the king's domain, the king's territory, the king's land. The One would have to teach and train all of creation what a king was and how a king ruled and governed the land and its resources. The One knew that he would have to come back and correct the defective concept of what he is as a king, and even what a king was, and how it related to all of creation. The One knew that he, the one and only true King of creation, of the entire universe, of all life, would have to bring correction to the misunderstanding of his ancient concept of himself as a king, and that his soon-coming family would also be kings themselves in their spiritual nature, their spiritual identity, and their spiritual ambassadorship of the kingdom of heaven on earth for the King, the One, His Majesty, the King. His Majesty, the King, knew that because of the loss of the original concepts of Him being a King of the universe and all that goes with that identity, with that character, with that nature, with that royal governance system, the kingdom, all creation would be lost and fall under the slavery of another and be vexed and groan with pain until they were freed by the kings of the universe who knew not that they were. So all of creation would have to wait for the sons of the King of the universe, the King's children, to arise to set them free. The One's foreknowledge told him that his concepts of being a king, having a kingdom, and all that these ancient, eternal words meant would become entombed in tombs of darkness, and he would need to send back a vessel to correctly speak about the king and its kingdom. So he knew he would have to send back his own words, his own thoughts, his own ideas, his own definitions, his own concepts to all of humanity and to all of creation to be healed from all the forgotten concepts of kings and kingdom. The One knew that through darkness, which he says is ignorance, his concepts of himself as the king of the universe, and that the universe is a kingdom, the territory of the king, would be distorted and forgotten. But his own heart was preparing itself for this long journey he would have to take to get the desires of his heart. The One knew that he would have to be patient and long-suffering to get to the final eternal ending he desired, even before he would step out of his closet of being one, out into the vastness of nothingness, and bring forth life and creation. But the One would begin at the beginning, with himself first, His Majesty, the King, a king by birth, a royal majesty, glorious in nature, the highest ruler, the King of all that is, the King that was owner of all of creation by right of creation, the Lord, the owner of all that is, and all that was, and all that will be, the Lord, the owner and captain of all the host, the armies of his servants, his mighty ones to come, the Lord, King Almighty, the God of all power and might. The One was beginning to eternally define himself, his character, his identity, his place in creation to come, his governing system, the kingdom of righteousness, his structure of his kingdom of the universe with all of its rulership and how it was to reign and how he and his kingdom were to reign and maintain its authority and dominion for all of eternity. So he announced to himself, to that which was within himself, a king was born. His Majesty, the King, came forth into life from out of the depths of his imagination. And now the One was one step closer to stepping out of his closet of being just one, out into the vastness of nothingness, to bring forth all of creation and life that he, the One, had within himself. The One still had more to get organized yet, before the great day of stepping out was to come. So that ends this story time about the One, His Majesty, the King. Come again next time for story time with Pastor Deborah in the Garden of Eden, and learn more about the One and His creation of life. Love always and forever, Pastor Deborah.